Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of CS Mentor, and today we are going to talk about publishing in a conference, and we are going to try to answer the question, should I publish in a conference? But before we go into details to answer this question, I want to mention that the best person to answer this question for you, for your specific paper, for your specific research topic, is your advisor. So definitely, while the content of this video is going to be informative, you always should discuss with your advisor in order to decide what to do with your publications. So first off, what is a conference? Where there are hundreds, if not probably thousands of conferences organized every year. A conference is an event which is periodically organized, generally every year. Most of them are organized every year. And in these events, researchers present papers. And by researchers, I mean students, postdoc, faculty, people working in research laboratories, etc. So generally a conference is a main track where the papers submitted to the conferences and accepted at the conference are presented, but there are also several satellite events, and this could include workshops, it could include work in progress papers, it could include Ph.D. forums where students present, for example, a poster that summarizes their thesis or the research that they're doing now. And also, for example, industry track, industry stands, industry presentations, etc. So conferences are generally organized and they're sponsored by a society. And this could be, for example, IEEE or ACM. So these are the two most common society in computer science and computer engineering. Mostly ACM sponsors conference in computer science, while IEEE both sponsors conference in computer science, computer engineering, but also electrical engineering, etc. It's Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. So, of course, it has a wider spectrum. There are many others societies, not really society, let's say organizations these days that sponsor conferences, and I'm going to talk about a little bit at the end of this video. So what is the structure of the organizing committee of a conference, and what each of these persons actually does in order to make the conference possible? So first of all, there is a lot of work that goes into the organization of a conference. At the top of this organizing structure, there is the steering committee, so a group of people that somehow carry on the conference from year to year. And the role of the steering committee, without of course not mentioning that they take care of the quality of the conference, of keeping the conference of high standard and high quality, the main job is to select the general chair and select the TPC chairs. So the general chairs are those that basically organize every year more or less the entire conference. So they select the other members of the committee, they supervise some budget issue, local organization issue, etc. The TPC chairs instead are those that take care of the paper review process and take the decisions on which papers are going to be accepted and which papers are going to be rejected. There are, however, a bunch of other chairs that are involved in the conference organization, such as the finance chairs that generally takes into account the course of the finances, such as the budget, expenses, etc. Local arrangements chair to organize, for example, restaurants, hotels, venues, transportations, etc. Publication chair, which is in charge of preparing the camera-ready versions and basically the proceedings of the conference, and they are going to be published on the website of the sponsor of the conference, such as, for example, IEEE or ACM. Then there is the publicity chair that periodically sends advertisement on the conference, for example, through mailing lists, social media, etc., in order to make the general public and other researchers aware that this conference exists and papers can be submitted. Also, other things are, for example, advertised is the fact that some keynote speakers have been scheduled, or the fact that travel grants are available, etc. So the publicity chair have the role of spreading the information about this conference. Then there are the workshop chairs that are in charge of organizing different workshops and supervising the organization of different workshops. The registration chair that takes care of the registration. Sometimes these days, given the virtual format or hybrid format of some conference, we also have a virtual experience chair. Then there is a travel grant chair, basically has the responsibility of selecting the people that will receive the travel grants in order to attend the conference. Generally, these are students. And then there is the technical program committee, which is a large group of people that are actually responsible for the reviews. Depending on the size of the conference, this can go from few tens of people up to hundreds in case of large conference in which you need a lot of reviews for each paper. And some conferences also have the area chairs, especially the very large conferences, which basically between the TPC chairs and the technical program committee chairs are the area chairs that are responsible of supervising a specific area or of expertise where the papers have been submitted. So let's discuss what is the process from the moment you submit a paper to a conference to the moment in which you get the notification and you know if your paper has been accepted or rejected. So there are several steps involved into this process. So the first one, of course, is to submit the paper. And to do that, you generally use a submission system that could be, for example, EDAS, OCRP, etc. Note that some conferences have a prior step to the submission, which is the paper registration. So there the idea is that before the final submission deadline, for example, a week before or 10 days before, you need to declare that you're going to submit a paper to this conference. And generally, you need to submit the list of authors, the title, and the abstract, and the list of topics, so that the TPC chairs can actually organize the review process, having an idea of how many people are going to submit, what is going to be the distribution of papers in different areas, do they need to invite more TPC members, etc. So definitely check for the conference website to check if your conference requires a registration before the actual submission of the paper. So once the submission deadline is passed, all the papers are collected, so the TPC chairs assign them to the area chairs if they are present, or if not, they assign the papers directly to the TPC members that need to perform the review. In order to perform these reviews, usually TPC members fill a form. So this form has several components, and exactly which component depends on which conference you are considering. But generally, there is a block for strength, for weaknesses, another one for detailed comments, and for the quality of writing, etc. So of course, each conference could be slightly different about this, but generally these are the main blocks that you will find. And also, each TPC member needs to express a score about the paper. And this score could be, for example, accept, likely accept, borderline, likely reject, and reject. Also, this classification could be slightly different depending on the conference, but more or less, this is the typical range that you will find. So this means basically this a specific TPC member would like to see the paper, let's say, accepted or rejected, or maybe something in between. Sometimes even TPC members are required to rank the papers that they have reviewed. Once all the reviews are decided, the TPC members decide which paper should be accepted and which should be rejected. So generally, the scores of the TPC members are translated into numerical values, so the TPC chairs can look at, for example, what is the average score, what is the maximum score, minimum score, what is the standard deviation, what is also the reviewer expertise. So, for example, TPC members may say, I'm an expert in this topic, or it may say, I don't know anything about this topic, or I know very little about this topic. So all these components, including the reviews, are considered to decide if each paper needs to be accepted and rejected. And once this decision is made, the notifications are sent to the authors. So the authors of the accepted papers then need to prepare the final version of their paper, which is called the camera ready, which is the actual version that finally is going to be included into the proceeding of the conference. And in this camera ready version, generally you need to address the reviewer comments that you have found in the reviews. So maybe some reviewers may say, oh, you may need to rewrite this part, or maybe add these experiments, or slightly modify the paper to make this more clear, etc. So it's important that you address this issue in the camera ready version. So there are different types of review systems that are available today. So I think this is a good point to explain which one these are. So these are known as open review, blind, double blind, or triple blind. So in an open review system, basically everybody knows everything. So the authors know the identity not only of the chairs of the conference, but also the identity of the reviewers that reviewed that paper. And of course, the reviewers also know the identity of the authors. And in some cases, even you have the general public to know who are the reviewers that reviewed that specific paper. So this is something that is not that common yet, but it's getting a little bit more common with time and with certain type of review systems. Then there is the blind review system that is probably the most common, in which basically the authors do not know the reviewers, but the reviewers know the identity of the authors. Then there is a double-blind review system, which is also relatively common, in which the authors do not know the reviewers, but also the reviewers do not know the authors, to make sure they are not biased against or in favor of some authors. Then some few conferences have a tribal-blind review systems, in which authors do not know the reviewers, reviewers don't know the authors, but then the area chair also do not know the identity of the authors. And of course, in all these systems, the TPC chairs always know the identity of the authors and always know the identity of the reviewers, since they are managing the entire review process. So what are the outcomes of a possible conference submission? So mostly the outcome is binary. And this is the main difference with respect to submitting to a journal, and we are going to make a different video about that. So here the outcome is either accept or reject. So in some sense, it's better because, you know, if it gets accepted, there is no more interaction. But of course, if there are some things that the reviewers didn't like, then the paper is going to be rejected. Some conferences have an additional step, which is called shepherding. And here the idea is that you want to make sure that the authors address the comments that are specified by the reviewers in their reviews. Because once a paper is accepted, there is not really a quality check to make sure that the authors are going to do anything to address those comments. So the shepherding is there for that purpose. So one member of the TPC committee is generally assigned to shepherd one paper or few papers, and he needs to make, or she or they need to make sure that the authors, while submitting the camera ready, actually address the comments of the reviewer. So this is kind of something in between a regular binary outcome in the conference version, and also a little bit more similar to a journal, if you want. Because there is still the possibility that a paper is rejected, even if it gets shepherded by someone, in case you don't address the comments satisfactorily. So papers that are rejected may be invited to workshops, they may be invited to work in progress, so they may be invited to other satellite events related to this conference. And also some conferences give the opportunity to selected papers to be published as an extended version to journals. And so this is something that is worth considering. You're not required to do it. You may say, I'm not interested, but you know, if the conference allows you to publish in a good journal with an extended version, this is generally a fast track, so it's a convenient opportunity. Another question to address is this a good conference? And I mean, it's very hard to answer with a definite and absolute answer to this question. There are many things to consider. And so the first one is the ranking of the conference. And even here, there is no absolute ranking, because I mean, each ranking is based on some metrics, it's based on sometimes on opinions of people that publish or are in that area. But in general, you know, each ranking is somehow fallible. So it can give you an idea. So I think it's important to be aware of rankings. It's important to know that they exist, and it's important to check them to have an idea of, wait, at this conference, never heard of it, how good it is. But you know, you shouldn't take any specific classification or any specific comparison between two conferences too literally. I mean, it is unlikely that a ranking is going to put a very good conference in a very bad place and a very bad conference in a very good place. But then the actual specific ranking may be, you know, affected by different factors. Another aspect to consider is the conference history. So what papers have been published at that conference? Have they been cited or not cited? Also, how long the conference has been around. If a conference has been around 40 years, must be, you know, a pretty solid conference that is well supported by the community, that many people have published in that, while a new conference may or may not exist for a long time. Another aspect to consider is the acceptance rate. So basically, the acceptance rate tells you how many papers are accepted versus how many papers are submitted. So, however, you cannot consider this number as an absolute number of the quality of the conference. So generally good conference or very good conference tend to have a low acceptance rate. I would say between 20 and 10%, maybe slightly lower than 10%. But the problem is that if you have a very good conference, people are only going to submit very good papers because they know it's going to be rejected otherwise, right? So you cannot really just compare that number to the number of another conference to say this conference is better or that conference is not good. However, it can tell you, how hard it is to get a paper accepted at that conference in some terms. And of course, the best thing to do is to ask your mentors, to ask your advisors about, what is the reputation of this conference. Is it a good idea to submit at that conference? In general, I think you need to target the right venue considering what is the quality of your paper, so how good is this contribution, how much of a important novel contribution this paper is providing, and of course your advisor can help you understanding this. Also, what are your personal goals? Because submitting to a very high quality conference is great if you get it accepted, but the likelihood that the paper is rejected, it's significant, even if the paper is good. So, if you're about to graduate or graduating soon, you may think about that being or being not a good opportunity. But at the same time, of course, you don't want to submit a paper that is extremely good to a conference that is, let's say, medium tier, just because you want it published. It can happen, but you really need to kind of balance all these factors. And again, your advisor can provide you good guidance. So let's finally address the question, should I publish in a conference? So the answer, of course, is yes, but you should consider many different things before deciding. So what are the advantages of publishing in a conference? The first one is the short turnaround time. So generally you submit the paper, and after maybe a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months, you hear back what the outcome is. Also, the outcome, as we said, is binary. So you know if the paper is going to be accepted or it's not going to be, or it's going to be rejected. And this is different from a journal, and I'm going to make another video about that. Then you have a chance to network with the community. By attending the conference, you have a chance to talk to potential other students, potential advisors, mentors, and other leaders in the community that work in your area and also in nearby area. Also, your work is going to be visible. Sometimes in conference, you get to present in front of tens of or even hundreds of people. And so it's amazing to reach in one instant all the people that are then aware of what your paper is about. Also, publishing to a conference does not prevent you to extend the work to a journal. So this is definitely something also you want to consider. So you may maybe get 2 publications out of basically one idea, as long as that idea is sufficiently extended in order to be published into a journal. Finally, especially in computer science, this is true. Some conferences are extremely prestigious, even more than most journals. So definitely publishing in this conference is something that you want to do if you want your CV to look stellar and amazing. However, there are some cons in publishing to a conference. The first one I would mention is the cost. So when you publish into a conference, you need to consider the cost of registering the paper. Registering the paper usually is around $800, $900, even more if you have extra pages that you need to buy. Then there is the cost of the trip, airfare, lodging, meals. So it's not uncommon to have a single paper to cost $2,000 or $3,000 to publish. And this is an expense that, of course, your advisor generally is responsible for covering. Part could be covered by a travel grant, but at the same time, it's a significant expense that someone needs to consider before submitting the paper. Also, as I mentioned before, some conferences have a low acceptance rate, meaning that even if your paper is good or even if your paper is extremely good, it may be rejected just because there are so many other good papers out there that your paper didn't make the cut. So you need to take this into account because your paper may take some time before it actually gets published. If it gets rejected at this conference, and then you decide to improve it and to submit it again. Also, the outcome is binary. So this is an advantage in terms of that your paper has been accepted, but it may also be a disadvantage because you have no chance generally to make a rebuttal and say, hey, you made these comments, but look, we can change a little bit of this, we can change a little bit of that, we can explain this, we can do another experiment and improve it. There are some, as I mentioned before, shepherding techniques, but these are basically for the papers that are already make the cut. They're already going to be accepted. But most papers, we just get the comment as they are, and that is still going to be the outcome of the paper decision. Also, finally, I want to mention this to conclude the video. We need to be careful, all of us, about predatory conferences. So these days, there are hundreds of conferences out there that just are there to make money. And you really need to be careful about where you submit your hard work before committing to submit to a conference that maybe is really not worth the value of your scientific contribution. Again, here the advisor is the best person to talk to. Also, you can use rankings. You can use a general talk to mentors and the opinions in the community. But watch for predatory conference, which is, it's a phenomenon that is becoming more and more common these days. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you will be finding this content useful, and I'll see you soon on the next video.